Lawmakers in Washington, D.C. are keeping an anxious eye on the horrific events unfolding in one of the United States' closest non-NATO allies. But congressional activity on Capitol Hill is at a standstill because of the historic ouster of Kevin McCarthy from the speakership, and only an interim speaker left in charge. The leadership vacuum is causing consternation from the White House as well, with a senior administration official saying, quote, "There probably is a role for Congress here, and without a Speaker of the House, that is a unique situation we're going to have to work through." Joining me now for more is Congressman Benny Thompson from the state of Mississippi. He's also the ranking member of the House Homeland Security Committee. Congressman, first of all, I'm wondering, have you been able to receive any briefings, classified or not, on the situation in Israel? And is there anything you can share with our viewers at this moment?
Well, there's nothing that we received in a classified setting. Everything we've received so far has been in the public domain. So there's a need for that information. But as you said in your introduction, we're kind of at a loss because we don't have a leader in terms of a speaker. And so as soon as we can get a speaker elected, we can get back to business.
The House not having a permanent speaker is creating a lot of agita debate, Congressman, whether Acting Speaker Patrick McHenry can even participate in intelligence briefings like you and I were just talking about, and how important that information is. What is your opinion on the fact that there's a leadership vacuum in the House right now that may directly and substantively affect the situation in Israel?
Well, there's no question there's a vacuum. As you know, there's a team between the House and the Senate called the Gang of Eight. Well, one of those 8 members is the Speaker of the House of Representatives, which we don't have. The question is whether or not our Speaker pro tempore, McHenry, can participate or not. So there are a lot of gaps in this situation. The crisis in Israel is just expanding that, but it's part of, the Republican, what I should say, confusion on their part. They elected a leader, they're a majority party, and when you're the leader and in charge, you have to demonstrate leadership. Right now, that leadership is not there.
You know, Congressman, I have to ask, with all of the drama that was going on and the chaos that was created by the GOP, leading to the ultimate ouster of Kevin McCarthy last week, creating the vacuum that you and I are talking about, was that just not contemplated, the knowledge that the House can't move forward with the absence of a permanent speaker to be able to get legislation even introduced and passed? Was that not even a part of the analysis or the calculus by the Republicans when they were trying to figure out how to do their job?
Well, you know, it's so unfortunate. I've been through a number of speakers during my 30 years here. I've never seen anything like this. Normally, if there are some missteps or things that need to be worked out, the speaker and his team would work it out. It was obvious that the speaker, to become speaker, gave up an awful lot of authority that goes with the position. And so what you have was an impotent speaker with nothing to use as leverage. He gave up all the tools in the toolbox, and it's obvious from the fact that the very people he did the most for ended up being his worst nightmare.
I wanted to ask you as well, considering the fact that there's only 2 names that have put their hat into the proverbial ring, Jim Jordan and Steve Scalise, is that kind of now becoming a part of a discussion in the House when it comes to the prospective permanent new Speaker of the House, seeing how we have this type of conflict that's going on in one of the United States' closest allies in Israel?
Well, I would hope not, but it does not bode well when you look at what's occurring. If we can't, in short order, elect a speaker, then it's impossible to help our friends around the world. They're both Democratic and Republican supporters of Israel in the House. But if we can't get our House in order and elect a speaker, then Israel is at risk. So it is important for us, whenever we are convened back this week, to expeditiously elect a speaker. And so my Republican colleagues need to get their act together. They're the majority party. And, you know, Democrats, we're the loyal opposition. But if it were up solely to the Democrats, we'd elect Hakeem Jeffries Speaker. But obviously, at this point, we don't have the numbers. We'll probably put his name forward again. We will vote in unity for him. And perhaps the Republicans can take some lead from the Democrats and get their house in order, elect a speaker so we can move forward and provide the leadership, not just on Israel, but on Ukraine and other issues around the world, like we've been known for.